Hello and welcome to my channel. In today's video, I am co-hosting the Useful DIY Challenge August 2019 with Momdas from Momdas Life Handmade. If you haven't visited her channel, please go ahead and do so. She has some great ideas. I'll link her below. In this upcycle challenge, I will be upcycling items that I found both at the Goodwill bins and at yard sales into items for my home. I'm going to make a two-tiered tray and also a spice rack. If you like this kind of content, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. And of course, find me on Instagram at Nicole North Garden. Here we go. So for my entry in this challenge, I'm going to be upcycling two different things. Well, actually a few different things into two different items. If you remember this is a Lazy Susan that I had gotten a while back. And I've already gone and spray painted it. So that one is one that I'm going to be working on. And then a long time ago, maybe in some of my first yard sale videos, I got these items. So this one was $1 at a yard sale and this one was 25 cents. I am going to be upcycling those into a two-tiered tray. Oh, and I'll also be using these, which I got at a rummage sale, thus the dot on them. Forget how much they were, but it was not a lot. Oh, it was at a bag sale, so I just shoved them in my bag. And one of these from the Dollar Tree. These are those wooden rolling pins that they've had recently. So that's what I'm going to be using for my DIY challenge. And I am in my new craft room, which is going to be redone here shortly. You'll see those videos in September, but for now, you'll just have to deal with the decor that's here. And I'm gonna go ahead and film in here because it's evening and this is the best place to be for doing a DIY. So, okay, so here we go. So for this part of the project, I'm using this Lazy Susan, some matte Mod Podge, this graphic that I printed out backwards on my laser printer, that's an important fact, and a makeup wedge sponge from the Dollar Tree. And first I go ahead and I spread some of the matte Mod Podge onto the back of my graphic, which I've trimmed down a great deal. You want to have as little paper as possible. And then I also go ahead and I put Mod Podge on my Lazy Susan as well, in the area that I think I'm going to put the graphic. Once I spread all the Mod Podge, I take my graphic and I flip it over, and then with my hands I spread from the center out to try to get as much air out from underneath it as possible. Then I take a credit card, I use my IKEA family card, and continue to spread it out and flatten it to get all the air bubbles out. And once I get all the air bubbles out, I let it dry overnight. And this is so that the laser transfer will work. If you don't let it dry well enough, it won't work properly. While that is drying overnight, I go ahead and I start the second project. I take some brown paint, two different shades, one in brown and one in espresso, and another makeup sponge. And I put a little bit of each color paint on a little plastic lid. And then I add water because I'm actually going to be using the paint as stain of sorts. I like to do this because it doesn't take as long to dry as stain. So I just go ahead and thin it out with water, and then I take my Dollar Tree rolling pin, which I did have my husband cut down a little bit. He'd used his table saw to do that for me. And then I use my makeup sponge and I just spread the paint on really thinly, just as you would do a stain. And I do the same thing to the little feet that are going to go on the bottom of the two-tiered tray. And the next day I took my rolling pin, and there were already holes in this tray, so that was not ideal and it wasn't perfectly centered, but we wanted the rolling pin to be centered, so we used the hole that was there and we lined up our rolling pin where we thought it looked like center, and then we marked the hole with an awl. We just kind of poked an awl through the bottom into the rolling pin and made a mark where we would drill our pilot hole. And I'm holding the rolling pin while my husband drills the pilot hole. And so it's slightly off center. Obviously, if you were starting from scratch, you'd want it to be completely centered, but it's not going to affect the functionality. And then we use the screw and poke that through the bottom and into the pilot hole. And then I go ahead and take the driver and drive the screw in until it's tight. We have this little washer as well. Then we go ahead and take the second tray and we use a pen to mark the center of the rolling pin on the top. And then the center hole on the second tray actually was pretty well centered, so we just lined up the hole in the tray with the mark on the rolling pin to make sure it was where we wanted it to go. And then we use our drill again to drill a pilot hole. And same process, then we take the screw and drive the screw in and tighten it all up. But before I tightened it up completely, I did make sure that the angles were right and that it was positioned the way that I wanted it to be positioned. And then I went ahead and tightened it the rest of the way. And the last step in this project was to glue on the little feet. So I took my E6000 and my hot glue, put a little E6000 and then hot glue. And this just helps the feet to stay in place while the E6000 dries, because E6000 does not dry right away. And I do that same process for all 4 feet. And then I let that dry for a while. Then I take my little spice rack and I take a rag. I love these IKEA rags. I use them for all my crafts. And now this is fully dry. Remember, it dried overnight. And I take a little cup of water and dip my rag in, and I get that paper nice and wet. And then I just start rubbing with my finger to get the paper off. So basically you're taking the layer of white paper off of the black ink. So don't rub too hard because you can take the black ink off. And I did a little bit in one spot when I wasn't paying attention. But for the most part, it turned out really well. Then I take my black paint and another makeup sponge, and I go ahead and get a little tiny bit of paint on that makeup sponge, and I just turn my spice rack as I go. If it didn't turn, I would just move my hand slowly, and I'm just trying to give this the look of an enamel tray. And I go ahead and I do the same thing to the bottom tray. Then once that's done, I take my rag and I just put a little black paint every now and again to give the look of enamel that has scraped off. And here are the 2 projects side by side, and now comes the fun part. We get to style them for fall. And as I was styling my spice tray, I saw this enamel lid next to it, and I think they look really similar, so I was pretty pleased with my project. And so here's the spice tray all styled up. I've got a little plant on it and some spices that we use a lot, and my measuring spoons that I do keep out actually for easy access. And then here's the decorative tray, which I will put out for fall. I have it on my coffee table, and I really like the way that this looks and how it all turned out. I hope you've enjoyed my entry into the useful DIY challenge, and now on to some of my subscribers and other YouTube creators. Ginger Chick Rehab rehabbed a spice rack, and it was awesome, but Instagram would not let me download her photos, so please check out her channel to see all her great projects. Then my friend from Instagram, Birdod, sent these pictures. She picked up these chairs on the side of the road and repainted them for a beautiful addition to her outdoor space. And Pamela Blanchard made this beautiful arrangement for her auntie. Thank you to all who participated, and thank you for watching. See you next time.